and welcome back to the Retirement Report. I'm Hank Parrott, your host. All right, I'm going to get right back into this quickly. The Markowitz Efficient Frontier I was showing you. This is Dr. Markowitz won the Nobel Prize back in 1990 in economics for his equity research. What this chart basically shows, if you look to the far left, those numbers going up that side are the average return, and if you look to the bottom, the numbers going out to the right are the amount of risk. Further out you go, the more risk you have. So if you look then at the S&P 500 index there on the right, and it shows that it averaged over the last 40 years approximately 10% average return. With an 18% standard deviation, so that's pretty risky, right? A lot of volatility, as we saw in 2000 through 2010, when in fact it had a negative return, the lost decade. Now, if we look in fact at the moderate portfolio, which is the second one in from the right, that little box there, you see that it has about the same return as the S&P, but with half the risk. So on the next slide, what we'll show is what that looks like. This is a balanced growth portfolio utilizing the research done by Dr. Markowitz and further the three-factor model developed by Dr. Eugene Fama, who won the Nobel Prize in 2013 rather, just 2 years ago. He won the Nobel Prize in economics for his equity research and developed what's known as the three-factor model, which is how these portfolios are designed. Okay, here you've got over 12,000 different companies represented, 19 distinct asset categories, 46 total countries, so a very diverse portfolio. Unfortunately, in most 401ks, it's going to be difficult. So if we look at the next slide, it's going to be real tough to match up with that, but that's what ideally I first try to do within your 401k. If not, then we look at some other opportunities, ways that we can still maximize your return and minimize your risk. So if you look here at this chart, one of the things I'm showing, the S&P 500 index over the last 15 years. And as you can see, you've got a lot of volatility. If you invested $250,000 in the market at the beginning of 2000 as an example, you started out 2000 losing 9%, 9.24%. The next year you're thinking, oh, surely it's going to get better, and all of a sudden it drops negative 12%. I had clients coming in at that time like, when are things going to get back to normal? You know, the market's down like 20%. We're in this bear phase. What's going to happen? And of course, no one's got a crystal ball, right? We're saying we got to stay with what, as long as we're invested properly, we can ride these things out. Now, for most of my clients, fortunately, the people that were having the most problems were the new clients coming in that were scared. What's going to happen? When's things going to get back to normal? And having to show them ways that we could, in fact, safeguard their assets further. Fortunately, hopefully before 2002, and just when you think, wow, I'm down 20%, hopefully this is bad, this thing's about over, and boom, 22% goes down another 22%. So like about a 44% drop in that 3-year period. So my $250,000 is now worth $155,000. I'm down about 100 grand. Imagine that that happened just as you retire. And imagine that you're taking income from it. Oh my goodness, right? Now, if you're taking, let's say if you were taking 5% as an example from that, you're taking $12,000 a year, you'd have taken out another 36. Now all of a sudden you're down to maybe $120,000 left of your original, less than half of your original money in that event. This is why you've got to be so careful when you're, especially if you're within 5 years of retirement, whether 5 years before or 5 years after. That's one of the most critical periods. The difference between maybe being broke or being able to never run out of money. All right, so then what happens then is the market starts coming back, and you see in 07, it peaks out, and now we're up our $250,000 we invested. We were patient. We stayed in it now for 8 years, and we've made a whole whopping $30,000 on our money. Not great. At least we're in the black, right? We're in a positive. And then 08 happens, basically October of 07 through 09 when it dropped 55%. 08, our money now is at the end of 08, we're down to about $178,000 in our portfolio, and it actually went down a little more in the first quarter of 09 before it finally recovered. So now, wow, I'm less than what I started with at 250, and I'm now 10 years into the market. And finally in 2010, 11 years in, I get back up just barely at a break even, and I end up, we stay in, then we have a nice run through 2014. I've got now $450,000 based on the S&P. That's basically a little less than 4% average per year. Now, that's not real exciting, is it? Well, what's even less exciting is the fact that that outperformed 96% of equity mutual funds. They did even worse. Okay, this probably did at least twice as much. So the average investor over that period maybe earned 1 or 2%. Right? And now if you look at the now look to the right and you see a balanced growth portfolio. This is how you invest in the market, how the smart money invests, as I talk about in chapter 5 of my book. We're going to send that out to the first 10 callers, right? I'm going to get to that in a moment, but let me finish this chart real quick. You can see here, I'll just skip right through. First off, during the first bear market, 2002, this was like basically about a break even. I'm down like $1,500, $1,400 actually. All right, that's it. That's great. Then I go through, and then I'm peaking out at 436,000 by the end of 07. In 08, I lose money, but I'm still up almost 100,000 over my original investment, so I'm not feeling awfully too bad about it. And then look what happens. Within 2 years, I'm back up to where I was before that bear market drop. How long did it take the S&P to do that? It took it 5 years to recover versus 2 years. That's the power of diversification. And then over the entire period, over the 15 years rather, I got 550,000. I more than doubled my money. I got 100,000 more in that balanced portfolio than in the S&P. So what did it do? Exactly what Dr. Markowitz showed on the Efficient Frontier, didn't it? It gave me less volatility, less risk, half of that in fact, negative 20 versus a minus 37 on the S&P in 08 as an example, and a better return. I actually ended up with an even better return, not just an equal return. All right? So again, if you'd like to know more about this, if you'd like to see how your portfolio stacks up, if you'd like to know how the smart money invests and how you can in fact be in those that you're investing the same way the smart money invests, how to protect yourself, then be one of the first 10 callers to call my office, 615-376-5325. Debbie is standing by the phone. She will take your call. She'll gather your information. She'll send you out a checklist of some documents to bring with you so you can get the most of your time with me. And she'll send you out a free copy of my book, 7 Steps to Financial Freedom in Retirement. I can show you your financial future based on what you're doing. And guess what? I can show you how to improve it, how to dramatically improve it, and I can answer all your questions that you might have about when to take Social Security. Is it okay to retire? Am I going to have enough money? You know, how do I take income from this in the safest way? How do I guarantee that, you know, I'm not going to run out of money? How do I get the best return without, you know, a lot of risk? You know, all these kind of questions we're going to answer. Social Security, all of that is part of it. Tax planning, how do I minimize taxes? Estate planning, you know, what's better? Should I have a will? Should I trust? Which one's better for my situation? How do power of attorneys work? All of that we take care of, and we have people that'll come in with me to, you know, I work with some of the best estate planning attorneys in the state, as well as, you know, well, you've seen Dr. Friday on the show. She's another one that can come in and help with taxes and stuff. Plus we work with other professionals in making sure that we get you the best results possible. I'm a member of a number of associations, so we've got all kinds of resources that we can bring to bear to make sure you get the best plan for you and your family. So take advantage of that this week, first 10 callers. Now, spent a lot of time recapping basically about the investment part, okay? And what I want to talk about next is this thing on annuities, because I keep running into this. I see stuff in the news all the time, and I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me that people get this so wrong. And when I say people, I'm talking about there are advisors out there, just like we talked about, you know, someone's running an ad that's saying, oh, I hate annuities. Well, what does that do to people? And then you read one paragraph and you see they're talking about variable annuities. And then you might say, well, what is the difference in annuities? So let me show you the three worlds of investing. Okay? Let's get that back up again, and I'll walk through with you the different types of annuities. So if you look at that safe world, right, there's things like savings accounts, checking accounts, CDs, savings bonds, treasuries. See that insurance, fixed annuities? What do we know about fixed annuities? Well, they're kind of like CDs in a sense. That means we're going to get our principal's guaranteed. We can't lose our money, right? We've got interest guaranteed of some amount. Depends on, you know, when you invest and what company as to what that might be. Different terms, okay, 3-year, 5-year, whatever it might be, just like, again, similar to CDs in that regard. And at the end of the term, I get my money back, all right, plus my interest. Now the difference, some of the differences between CDs and annuities are this, fixed annuities. One is a CD, you can only take interest only while it's in there. So if you got a 5-year CD as an example, it's interest only. At the end of the 5 years, if you renew it, you're in for another 5 and you've got another penalty period. Here's where annuities differ. A fixed annuity allows you to take up to 10% of your money out. Okay, so you have more access to your funds while it's in there for that 5 years. And at the end of the 5 years, if you want to renew it and keep it in the annuity, there are no penalties after that. They don't renew the penalty. So it makes it 100% liquid. So those are two differences, but otherwise the safety aspect is what we're looking at and the guarantees. The problem is they don't pay enough interest to stay ahead of inflation and taxes, at least not historically. So you might earn anywhere from 1 to 4%. I think 5-year fixed annuities right now are somewhere in around 2.3% maybe. I've seen one recently that was offering, I think, close to 3% guaranteed interest for 5 years. CDs, on the other hand, you'd have to get into a 10-year CD to get that type of return. All right, so the problem, again, not staying ahead of inflation and taxes. We've talked about then going into stocks. Well, one other thing about stocks and mutual funds, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, variable annuities. These are the ones that most of the money goes into. This is unfortunately the one that you hear the most bad things about. All right, so when you look at, just as you know, Ken Fisher is advertising, I hate annuities, and he immediately goes to variable annuities. Why? High fees. Tony Robbins in his book talks about variable annuities as well, the difference between fixed annuities and variable annuities, and breaks it down in terms of the fees. You could be looking at anywhere from 3 to 5% annually in fees. That's a lot of fees. Okay, imagine in his example, I think he did when he was looking at average mutual fund costs, mortality expenses, when you put everything together in a variable annuity, I mean, mutual funds alone have some pretty hefty fees typically, but now add in the variable annuity part, and you could be talking, in his example, is 4.7% a year. So that means that you invest $100,000, the first $4,700 that's made goes out in fees. You've got your fund, or your variable annuity has to exceed that to make you any kind of positive return. So now some of them may have income riders or other things where they're guaranteeing you income for life, or if you stay in it for an X amount of time, or if you stay in it, let's say, they say, well, we'll guarantee your premium so that even if you lose the money, if you die, at least we'll give you the premium back to your beneficiaries. No, in other words, if it had lost, they're not going to make anything over whatever amount of years. But so you could lose all this money in this account, all right? And all they're going to say, now that you're almost feeling like you're stuck. Oh my gosh, now I can't take my money out, because if I take my money out, then when I die, they don't get anything. But what does that do for you when you're living? Not a whole lot, especially if you need income. And if it's going to guarantee income, it's going to limit that income. So these are things that we're going to add to fees to provide you that guaranteed income. So a lot of things that you got to watch for. Mainly it's about fees, and that's one of the things when clients come in for the first time and we're talking, they're saying, and I mentioned about annuities, they say, well, what about fees? That's exactly right. Good question. You want to avoid fees. So one of the things when you look at fixed annuities, guess what? No fees. Okay, so let's do the third world up there again, and I'll show you on it. So the fixed annuity part is on the left. On the right is variable annuities, lots of fees. And what else do we know about that third world? There are no guarantees, are there? Principal's not guaranteed, interest is not guaranteed, all right, and you need time. Remember I showed you on the S&P, even there was a 10-year period. It's unusual. I think, you know, it's extremely unusual to have a 10-year period in the S&P where it had a negative return, but it did happen, all right? And most recently it did happen, and that's the concern. Are we facing times with all the federal interventions? Are we facing times of more volatility or less volatility? These are one of the concerns that we have. So the third world, the one in the middle there, you have banks have what are called index CDs, insurance companies have what are called fixed index annuities. Both of these are ways that we can stay ahead of inflation and taxes based on their historical returns, and that's our biggest goal. All right, so let's talk about fixed annuities on this part. With fixed annuities and fixed index annuities, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to delve into how you can get safety principles. So imagine an investment where you could put your money in, you could get returns comparable to some of the things I've been sharing with you, these strategies, these market strategies, comparable to that, all right, without having to worry about losing your money. Would that be something you'd be interested in? If so, join us. We'll be right back on the Retirement Report.